Hey everyone, JMC27 here. A little late with getting this out. We meant to do it sooner, but some personal travel and winter sicknesses have delayed myself. I am here today on my own. Mark will, my partner in crime here, will likely do a rebut to some of this, but I just wanted to do a quick little Dynasty mock draft, rookie mock draft for 2026. Obviously, it's an early look. We don't know where players are landing and those kinds of things, but I just wanted to go through kind of my 1 through 12 first round mock draft and get some thoughts and comments from everybody as well. So I'm going to be basing today off of a Superflex tight end premium league, 12 man, as I just said, and kind of normal standard PPR scoring as well. So what I'm going to do is go through 1 through 12, who I see getting drafted at that position, and then kind of why, but also where I hope they land to help that draft positioning as well. So let's get started. 101 is consensus number one, Jeremiah Love. I don't think anybody is really questioning who's the number one overall pick. I think over the last few years there's always been one number one overall, but in this draft, especially being a bit light and particularly at the running back position, Jeremiah Love seems to be the number one consensus 101. The most popular landing spot right now seems to be the Chiefs at number 9, but I genuinely think that the Chiefs might be looking at someone else like an Etienne or a vet running back to be bringing in, and maybe they draft someone a little bit later. And I also don't think that's the best landing spot for Love, just given the offense and how it works over there in KC. So I do think it's a little bit hot, a little bit potential for the Chiefs, but I think there's better options for them. What I wanted to look at is where it would be really exciting that he did get drafted, and really exciting to see. But though it would be very high, would be somewhere like the Titans. Taking him at 4 is really high, a running back at 4. But the combine has been extremely impressive. It's a soft draft, and that's a team that's young and is building around Cam Ward and needs more offensive weapons. And they really have had a bit of a spot at running back where they haven't had anyone. So the Titans would be really cool to have there. Get Love there, and that offense would really start going. And I know I just said that was high, but in saying that, also a number somewhere else that would be quite exciting would be the Cardinals at number 3. They have a lot of holes to fill, but Love going to one of those teams I'd be all in on Love as far as giving up everything I possibly can to get that 101 pick. Whereas right now, I've been, I've seen some aggressive trades, and I've been a little aggressive myself. But thinking he might go to the Chiefs kind of limits me a little bit, or gives me a little bit of pause. If he falls past the Chiefs, there are several really tantalizing spots that I think if he landed, would be really, really exciting. And I think me and Mark talked about this last time, was the Vikings, especially at number 18, would be an awesome landing spot for him. Number 2, 102. Mendoza, and I think Fernando Mendoza, obviously, the number one quarterback in this draft, in a really soft quarterback draft. But I have noticed more recently some debate about this. Some people thinking he might actually slip down to 2, from 2 down to 3 or 4. Personally, in a super flex league, I think that would be crazy. But he's not touted as a generational type quarterback, and he's going to the Raiders. But in a super flex league, and this quarterback class especially, I think you have to take him at 2, no matter what. Also because the players behind him are not, have not proven enough for me to say, well, they're more guaranteed than he is. So if you're unsure about Mendoza and you have that 102 pick, what I'd personally be looking at doing is trying to trade back a spot or 2 for someone who is high on Mendoza, because I think in this draft, anywhere from 3 to 6 is all about the same. So I think Mendoza could be good, but the Raiders, as we all, I think, know how to ruin a good thing, and they have no receiver options at the moment. I know Brock Bowers is there, Michael Mayer, so maybe some 2 tight end sets, but they're missing a receiver, which they may draft later in the draft. But But people can make it work like May did this year. We didn't really have a lot of receiving options in New England, and he made it work. But you got found out in the playoffs, so you really do need that receiving option. So Mendoza is going to the Raiders, so I won't, as far as it seems at least, so I won't debate that. I think that's the best landing spot for him currently, as things stand. It'd be great to see him, go to a team that has more weapons around, but that's kind of where I think he'll be. 103. This is an interesting one. Popular opinion seems to be a receiver anywhere. Actually, I think 3, 4, and 5. I think a lot of people, most people, have a receiver going, and it's just a matter of which receiver that is. I am going for Lemon from USC. Popular opinion seems to be another receiver, which I'll name shortly, but not name Lemon. But I think Lemon is just really good, and I think he will land somewhere pretty positive, because it does seem to be he will be maybe the second or third receiver off the board. So I think his landing spot will be far better than those receivers maybe taken before him. I feel like the Browns are going to try and make a splash at 6 and draft a receiver. And I actually think it'll probably be Tate, with the whole OSU. He's from Ohio State. They're in Ohio, and all the hype he's been getting more recently as potentially the best receiver in the class. It seems like Washington will probably go defense at 7, and then I've seen people suggest New Orleans go receiver at 8. If so, I love this for Lemon. A young, at least a little bit promising quarterback in Shaw opposite Olave, I think is a great situation, and an offensive coach in Kellen Moore. If not to New Orleans, there's a handful of teams that have bigger needs than a receiver after them. But I think at 13, the Rams sit at 13. And to be honest, I think that would be an awesome spot for him and the whole organization, short and long term, to have across from Puka, as well as Devontae Adams there as a leadership role. So I think New Orleans seems like a really good fit. Potentially Washington there as well if they decided not to go defense. But the Rams would be an amazing fit for his development overall, and give him a little bit of space opposite a true receiver 1. 104. I have Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. I think he's potentially the best receiver in this draft, but some health issues in college, kind of stunted that a little bit. But he's looked really good, and all the tape I've seen of him looks really good. He's a big, strong, tall receiver, and he and Lemon, to me, have the chance to be elite out of the receiver core from this draft, depending on where they land. And I think, like Lemon, Tyson will land somewhere could potentially very advantageous, especially if he's the third receiver off the board. So on that, the draft order of the 3 top receivers will affect all of them so much, and that's one reason I'm a bit further down on Tate than the other 2, because anyone that lands with the Browns, I think, is doomed. No matter whether you're a Sanders fan or a Cleveland fan, it's just the reality of that team right now, I think. And Tyson will be there at 2 or 3, the receiver 2 or 3 off the board. Like I said about Lemon, I think the Rams could be an amazing spot for a young receiver to land, and I'd love to see that for him, for Tyson or Lemon. And I don't think Tate would make it that far. However, I've seen a lot of people that have him at the Ravens at 14, or even slipping to the Steelers at 21. And I think it is possible he falls to those spots. I wish he'd fall to 31 for the Patriots, but that's probably not going to happen. But 21 makes sense for Steelers. It would be great to have a young receiver across from DK, as well as 23 to the Eagles if they move AJ, or even 24 to the Browns if they don't take a receiver earlier, and then effectively reorganizing my rankings for Tyson if he does end up landing in Cleveland at 24. 105. I'm going to go the third receiver off the board, and the third of the group is Carnell Tate, even though I'm not really sold on him. I know and understand OSU is receiver university right now, but I believe Jeremiah Smith is the next big OSU receiver, not Tate. His numbers were kind of meh. I watched a number of OSU games last year, and nothing really stood out, especially for Tate specifically. A couple moments here and there, but especially not against quality competition. While all the other OSU receivers that have come throughout the years have succeeded in the that have succeeded in the NFL did also have at least one receiver one type year in college, and I think that's really missing from Tate. 700 yards and a handful of touchdowns is, to me, is not the receiver one type numbers I'd be looking for. The other side of this coin is that, as I mentioned already, I think the Browns take him at 6, and I think that will be his likely demise. It's not that I dislike Sanders at all, or if Sanders is even going to be the quarterback. I think that's one of the bigger problems. And I kind of wanted him to do all right this year, last year, but I watched a few of his games last year, and it was tough to watch. And at times, and it was tough to watch at times, and I think the Browns just kind of lack on offense, and they always have. They've never really been an offensive team with the weather in their division. Now, if he drops to the Commanders or the Saints or the Rams, like I suggested for the other two receivers, I can see that with him having a bit more success. But I just think Tyson Lemon are better and could do even better in an unadvantageous situation like even Cleveland. So now I'm going to get to 6 and beyond, and I think this is where it starts to get a little debatable or controversial. So I've got at 6 Kenyon Sadiq, tight end from Oregon. Most of my leagues are tight end premium leagues, so getting a young, strong tight end is really important, and I think at 6, grabbing him is the best. He's the best tight end in the draft. Has had a great combine this over the last few weeks as well, and I think is the top tight end of the draft. And if there's a top tight end of the draft that really looks promising, I'm going to take him in a tight end premium league. I've seen some people say the Dolphins will take him at 19. I'm not sure that I would see him going any earlier than that, but I think it'd be crazy for Miami to do so. They don't even have a quarterback. All the reports are releasing of Tua. But a couple really cool ideas. I mean, imagine if he fell to 21 at the Steelers. I think that could be a really interesting spot for him. And I just mentioned one of those receivers to the Steelers, but if say those receivers are gone and Sadiq is sitting there, I think that would be really exciting. None of the tight ends have seemed to work in Pittsburgh, and he gives them a young, fast, strong, solid tight end receiving option. What would be even cooler, in my opinion, would be if he fell down to 27 and San Francisco was able to get Kittle's replacement. Kittle's going to be out this year, if not all of the year. I think most of the year. Purdy clearly loves throwing to a tight end, and I think a move for Sadiq would be huge for that offense for this year and beyond, given Kittle's age and his potential comeback from a pretty significant injury. So San Fran would be an awesome place for him to go, and I think if he went to San Fran, I'd even consider potentially drafting him above one of those receivers that I just mentioned. But I can't see him going any earlier than Dolphins, but maybe somebody with this combine experience goes all in on a tight end. But we'll see where that goes after the combine and a really good season at Oregon. So all right, number 7. Just prepare yourself because I'm about to get ready to go on a little bit of an RB run here. There are a number of teams that could use an upgrade at running back, and as we saw last year, these young running backs coming into the league are really making statements, even if it is in a timeshare fashion. So first, I'm going to go with Emmett Johnson from Nebraska. The name has a nice ring, not Emmitt Smith or other Johnsons, but Emmett Johnson is that very standard, sounds like a superstar type of name, so I kind of like that. But he also is a really hard-nosed running back from Nebraska, a big Midwest team, Big Ten team, and that's just kind of the runner he is. He's not flashy or super exciting, but he's a really strong, really good running back. And then in my thought process, the other reason I'm going running backs here too is I look at teams like Minnesota, New Orleans, Washington, Tennessee, in the second, third rounds, taking some of these running backs that could really potentially have a massive impact on the backfield. And I think Emmett Johnson to me is one of the few running backs left that might actually be a 1A in those types of situations, whereas the rest of the running backs I see as more of a 1B. So those 4 teams could do with a solid runner, and I think Johnson could be that for any of those places. He's had a solid combine, not as quick as some of the other running backs, but again, coming through, fairly strong, really hard nosed back, and really just I think could have an impact fairly quickly. Number 8, Jadarian Price. I didn't think I'd have 2 running backs from the same team in the first round again this year after Judkins and Hendo last year, but everything you read about Price is positive. He's a bit bigger than the next running back taken, and that's why I have him here over the next guy. He was the 2 to Love, but Love was just elite. And so that makes a lot of sense, whereas Price, I think, could be a good, solid running back in this league. He's had some ball handling issues in college that will need to be addressed, because in the NFL that, you don't last long if you're fumbling the ball, unless you're Ramondre Stevenson, I suppose. But I also think one of the 4 landing spots I mentioned for Johnson, I do think that he could become maybe not the 1A like Johnson could, but a 1B. I think Jones Mason in Minnesota with him mixed in, Bill in Washington with him mixed in, and maybe a vet, Pollard, Spears, and him, all the Saints backs. I think he would get some play, but he's not going to get that sort of 1A look that that Johnson I think could potentially get. Quick break on that run from running backs, and I'll go back to it in just a second. But 109, I'm going to go in a QB direction here. Another QB in this soft QB draft at 9. The reason for that is I really do believe in a super flex league. You've got to get a quarterback and take a chance on a quarterback if they're going to be a starter for a long time coming too. I do wish I knew where the next couple of quarterbacks were going to land before choosing them, because the one I'm choosing here is going to be very controversial, because I think the one before him selected will go to the Jets, and I avoid anybody going to the Jets at a quarterback position. However, the Dolphins and Cardinals will both be drafting a quarterback, in my opinion, and I think any quarterback that goes to one of those teams could actually have some success. They've got some weapons around them. So I've seen a number of people opting for Ty Simpson to the Jets in the first round, and if so, I'm out on him, and that's why I am choosing here Carson Beck, and I quite like Carson Beck. There's some negativity around Carson Beck, and sometimes I don't really understand it. The guy's a winner. He's got the size, quick release. He's a bit athletic. He's from what I've seen, he's a baller. He's a gamer. Big games. He's played in a lot of them. He's played in the SEC, he's played in the ACC, so he's got some things to work on, of course, but I think in Miami and Arizona, even if he comes into that situation, at least he has some talent on offense to work with and a chance to grow into an organization. Miami and the Dolphins after the U would be pretty cool. It's not a far move for him, so going Carson Beck here with the caveat that if he's drafted by the Jets, then I'm going Simpson here instead. So number 10, back to running back, my last of the first round. This was going to be a tough one, and I'm still thinking about those 4 teams, Minnesota, New Orleans, Washington, Titans, and hoping, these 3 running backs I mentioned go to one of those teams. And I think this guy can carve out a bit of a role, just like I mentioned earlier, for more of like a 1B option. So while I don't love Jonah Coleman for Washington, I think he lands in a decent spot and gets some work early. Almost like a Woody Marks. I didn't really think highly of him, but he got a good spot, got a little bit lucky, and he's able to carve out a little bit of a role there. We don't know what it's going to be in the future, but he's known as a leader. He's a smart running back. He does all the little things like pass blocking. He can run. He can catch. A little bit of catching, abilities here and there as well. He doesn't have a lot of pure speed and even burst, but he has a knack of like slipping tacklers, not running through them, but kind of making his way through. And I just think he's a solid running back. It'd be kind of cool again to see him paired up a little bit wild here outside of those 4 I mentioned. But imagine with him with a Benson in Arizona. Benson's a little bit more quick, a little agility. That would be kind of cool. With Connor probably out the door, Bill and Daniels in Washington, and Spears in Tennessee. So he needs kind of that sort of. He can be a 3 down back, but he needs that 3rd down back that has that sort of speed and more of that catching ability. And I think he can play that sort of first and second down role pretty well. Number 11. Final receiver of the first round. Many might be thinking it's a bit late, and some of those receivers should come before those running backs. But I think receivers are a little easier to come by, and so running backs and quarterbacks are usually something I look for first. However, I think from here would be a big run of receivers into the second round if I were to go that far. So this is a tough one between Casey Conception, Boston, from also from Washington, and Cooper, Omar Cooper, and I'm going to go with the wild card here in Omar Cooper. I think there are some bigger concerns I have with the other two around hands, some drops and things like that in college and even at the combine that they've had with some drop passes. And I like a short-handed receiver that can also be dynamic and create plays. Kind of, some of the things I read about him is like in open play, he can break tackles, kind of like a Deebo Samuel type. And for those that know me out there, know I love a Deebo Samuel. So I think Cooper edges out the other two in this area. I just think he can be exciting. My other hope is that he's going to go a little bit after some of those guys and could land in a really decent spot. Love for him to land at the Patriots because we need a guy like this, but I don't think Vrabel will spend that first round capital on him, and he's probably not going to be there at the end of the second. And we really need O-line help, but it'd be a great fit for like a Drake May. I've seen people suggesting the Bills or the Steelers at 20 or 21, and I don't love that spot if I'm being honest. And right now it seems like Conception or Boston are more than likely going to go a little earlier at those spots. Another reason I'm going Cooper here, though, is because of that, because I think he will go to a good spot. Anyone going to the Steelers, any receiver going to the Steelers, or the Bills, outside of those big three, I think are probably going to struggle at first. Just look at Keon Coleman at the Bills, and some of the young receivers that have come to the Steelers more recently. It didn't really have that elite potential. But Denver, the Pats, one of those teams that has a young quarterback and really just needs a guy like Cooper, would be great landing spots. And something cool I'll throw in here, just a little add-on, is imagine if he landed at the Raiders in the start of the second round. That would be pretty cool to see Mendoza hooking up with his college connection in Cooper as well. So I think his landing spots provide more of an opportunity to develop, and so I would be going him at 11. And finally, 12, it is super flex, and quarterbacks, again, as I mentioned before, are very, very important. So I'm going to go Simpson, even though it is the Jets that potentially could take him. You never really know. And again, I would swap Beck and Simpson depending on those landing spots here. But if he lands at Arizona or Miami, I would definitely be taking him for Beck. I just think the Jets are going to take the gamble on him. He feels like a smart quarterback coming out of college. He's made some good decisions in college against premium competition. And I always think that that's really important. He was in the SEC, big, strong, fast defenses, was overall pretty accurate and effective. I think there were some inconsistencies, but and especially towards the end of the season, but it was also his first season as a starter, and it's a grueling SEC conference. I mean, every week is a big game, so in his first year, going up against that, I was expecting some inconsistencies. He's got an arm. He feels again like a gamer, which I love in a quarterback. He's athletic enough to tuck and run, and I've seen him take some hits, or get out of the pocket, take some hits, but make the pass. He's battled some injuries, and I think that's something he's going to need to make sure that isn't recurring. Protect his body a little bit more, but yeah. So that's a bit of a concern around him being potentially a little brittle, but I think he's got a lot of potential there overall, especially if his landing spot works out. If he lands at the Jets, I may still take him at 12, but I also may not. So that's my top 12. Following these guys into the second, I can see Conception, who I mentioned, from A&M, Boston from Washington, Eli Stowers, who's had an amazing combine from Vandy at tight end. I was really considering him at 12 here rather than Simpson. Katron Allen from Penn State, as well as, I bet a lot of people are going to get excited by the speed of Mike Washington Jr. from Arkansas and what we saw in the combine. I'm sure he'll move up some draft boards. So that's my 1 through 12. But I'm also going to throw out a few sleepers right now. I won't take just take a couple seconds here. I don't really see a lot of quarterback value, to be honest, outside of the three I just drafted, which is why I drafted them so high, and especially compared to the others in this draft. I think it's a really poor draft at the quarterback position, again, which is why I took those guys so high. I don't really have a sleeper at quarterback at the moment. I'm trying to go through films and things like that, but I just don't really see anybody with a lot of potential to do something in the NFL at the moment. At running back, Demon Claiborne from Wake, electric speed. He's got really strong burst, great cuts. Just needs to get a little bit bigger, stronger, hit the hole, and be a little bit more aggressive about hitting the hole. But the right landing spot for him could be awesome, almost like a Bucky Irving a few years ago. He really has a lot of potential to be a sleeper. Bryce Lance from North Dakota State University, receiver. I don't usually go for guys outside of the big D1 schools, but North Dakota State is one of the best schools within its class. He's a tall guy, 6'3". He's got elite speed, which I don't think I was really aware of until the combine. Really good footwork. He creates space at the receiver position. He'll go in the mid rounds, and could be a bit of a steal for a team. Another guy I'm hoping the Pats kind of think about in that sort of third, fourth round. And then at tight end, Claire Max from OSU. I don't know if he's really a sleeper to many people, but I think the Michael Trigg from Baylor and the other two, Eli Stowers and Sadiq, are the tight ends most people are talking about right now. I think Claire Max from OSU, he's a big, athletic, strong, fast tight end, and I think that really continues to be in fashion in the NFL and could have an instant impact on a team that needs a pass-catching tight end option. Needs to work on some run blocking and being a bit more of an all-around tight end, but I think he could be a really exciting score. So that's me. That's my 1 through 12 first round mock draft, and looking forward to any comments or feedback.